Hi everyone, welcome to savingforcollege.com's webinar. It's just now about 1 o'clock p.m. so we're going to give everyone just another minute or two to sign on and then we will start the presentation. Okay, well, welcome to today's webinar. This is our year-end edition of How to Reach Your College Savings Goals with a 529 Plan. I'm Katie Flynn from savingforcollege.com, and joining me today is Matt Toner from GradVisor. We want to thank everyone so much for joining in today. We're excited because it looks like we have a really great turnout. Over the next hour, we'll be discussing 529 plans and taking some live questions from the audience. So if you'd like to ask us a question during any time of the presentation, please go ahead and type that question into the Q&A box on your screen. That is the box where we will be reading the questions from, so make sure you type it in there as soon as you have one. And we're going to do our best to answer as many of these questions as we can during the hour. But if for some reason your question doesn't get answered, you can always visit our forum at forum, that's forum.savingforcollege.com. After the presentation, we'll be sending an email with a chance for you to give us some feedback. So we'd appreciate it if you can just take a quick second, let us know what you think, and also let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see from us at savingforcollege.com. This webinar today is brought to you by UPromise. UPromise is a smart way to save for college every day by shopping online, going out to eat, booking travel, and more. It's free to join and simple to use, and you can learn more at upromise.com. So
Katie, before we get started, I think, we always have a bunch of questions that come in at first, just asking if there's going to be a recording of the webinar after.
There is. So this webinar will be recorded and we will be sharing the slides as well. So that will come in the email that I just mentioned. And then just quickly what we're going to cover today is we'll talk about different ways you can save for college or private K-12 school. Matt will discuss why we think the 529 plan is the best way to save for education, and also how to select the right 529 plan for you and your family. And then I'll go into some detail about how 529 plans affect financial aid and some special tips for grandparents. And we'll close off by discussing the best way to withdraw from your 529 plan when it's time to pay for college. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, we want to talk about there's different ways to save for college. So according to Sallie Mae's 2018 How America Saves for College report, 22% of families reported that they use a regular savings account to save for college. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. You can save for college however you choose, and some savings is always better than none. But remember that a regular savings account offers very low interest rates, and there is no tax benefits to using that. So I guess 14% of parents said they would use a mutual fund or other type of investment account, which is better. The potential for greater returns is better. You can accumulate more savings over time. but most investment accounts are taxable. So what we want to talk about with you today is that there are tax advantage accounts that can help families save for education. So the most popular options are the 529 plan, the Coverdell Education Savings Account, a Roth IRA, or custodial accounts under Uniform Gifts to Minors Act or the Uniform Transfers to Minor Act. So these are all tax advantage accounts that can be used to save for college, and in some cases K through 12. But we feel that 529 plans offer some unique benefits that we wanted to highlight. And first of all is that you can change the beneficiary. So this comes in really handy, let's say if your child decides not to go to college, or if you have more than one child and one of the siblings doesn't use up all of the money. So you can easily change it back to one of the siblings and let them use the funds. So that's one of the unique benefits of 529 plans. And also, there's less restrictions compared to the other savings options, specifically contribution limits. With the Coverdell Education Savings Account, your annual contributions are going to be limited to $2,000 per year per beneficiary. And as we know, with the cost of college and even private K through 12, $2,000 per year might not get you as much as you want to save. The Roth IRA is also sometimes used to save for college, but again, your contributions per year are going to be limited, $6,000 or $7,000 if you're over 50, and that's for 2019. So how much can you put in a 529 plan? It's a question we get often. 529 plans have what they call aggregate contribution limits. So these are not yearly contribution limits. It's a limit throughout the life of the account. And those are going to be determined by the state that sponsors the plan. And it's going to be based on the cost of a 4-year education at a private expensive college. So in some states, these limits are as high as $500,000. So you can safely fund a child's full college education with using a 529 plan. 529 plans also have no income limits, and this is different than some of the other vehicles listed, like the Coverdell and the Roth. It doesn't matter what your household income is, anyone can qualify to open a 529 plan and get the tax benefits. Matt, is there any questions? Should stop here.
Yeah, we have some, but you're going to be covering them in the next couple of slides, so we'll just keep it going for now.
Okay. So let's move on to one of the next biggest differences, and that is the qualified expenses. So when you're deciding on a college savings account, you want to know which expenses are qualified. And that's because only the withdrawals used to pay for qualified expenses are going to be eligible for the tax savings. So for example, if you end up taking a non-qualified withdrawals from a 529 plan, so for example, you use your 529 plan to buy a car, you're going to have to pay ordinary income tax and a 10% penalty on the earnings portion of that withdrawal. So it's very important to understand when you're using these different savings vehicles, which expenses are qualified. So with the 529 plan, there's a pretty broad range of qualified expenses. You're going to get federal tax-free growth and tax-free withdrawals when the funds are used to pay for college expenses such as tuition, fees, books, computers, room and board, but only if the student is enrolled at least half-time. And this could even be for an off-campus apartment. We get a lot of questions about this. Not all students live in the dorms. If they're living off campus, the amount that's considered qualified is going to be the amount determined by the college's cost of attendance, which you can get from the financial aid office. And then most recently, with the tax reform of 2017, you can now use a 529 plan to pay for up to $10,000 in K through 12 tuition expenses. So when it says tuition expenses, that's really all it is. You cannot use 529 plans to pay for K through 12 uniforms or boarding or anything like that. Really, the K through 12 expenses are limited to just tuition. With the Coverdell, remember again, you can only contribute $2,000 per year per beneficiary, but there's a broader range of elementary and secondary expenses. So for K through 12, if you're using a Coverdell, you can use those funds to buy books, supplies and equipment, sometimes academic tutoring. And if they are required or provided by the school in connection with attendance or enrollment, you can also use a Coverdell to pay for room and board, uniforms, transportation, and sometimes even extended day programs. So you have a little more options there. With a Roth IRA, a lot of people use these as a college savings vehicle, even though a Roth IRA is traditionally a retirement savings vehicle. But if you're 59 and a half or older, you can withdraw the earnings tax-free from a Roth as long as you've had the account for at least 5 years. If you're not 59 and a half, you can still take a distribution. If it's used to pay for qualified education expenses, you'll avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty, but you still will pay ordinary income tax on the earning portion. And then you always have the option to withdraw the contributions penalty-free and tax-free at any time for any reason. But if you are going to use that penalty waiver to pay for qualified education expenses, that's going to include tuition fees, books, supplies, equipment, special needs expenses, and these are all expenses related to college, not K through 12. The final option is the custodial account. And when you see no restrictions, that might sound great at first, but you have to remember that what a custodial account is that it's a financial account open for a minor. So this account could be opened at a bank, credit union, or brokerage firm. And the custodian is typically a parent or grandparent. So once the beneficiary reaches legal age, they're going to gain control of those assets, and there are no restrictions. So that means if you're using this custodial account to, as a college savings vehicle, and the beneficiary decides not to go to college, it's really their choice. They can use the money however they want, a shopping spree, a vacation, anything. So they might not use the money for college, and depending how you feel about that.
Katie, we had some good questions come in here. These are kind of related. We had some people wonder if you can pay for vocational school and then also graduate school, medical school and law school with a 529 plan.
Yes, you can use the 529 to pay for any eligible institution. And we do have a tool on savingforcollege.com and this applies to colleges only. This is not a tool that works for K through 12, but if you are talking about post-secondary schools, which would be vocational schools, graduate schools, you can go onto the tool and find your school. And as long as the school is eligible for federal financial aid, it should show up on that list. So in most cases, the answer is yes.
Awesome. And then, lastly, someone was wondering a little bit about that $10,000. They're wondering if that is, the annual amount or total amount for each 529 plan. So I think that's more on the beneficiary level, correct?
Correct. Yes. Just to clarify that, $10,000 for K through 12 tuition, that is per year per beneficiary.
So they can't split those 529 plans between two parents and take out $10,000 for each child. It's per beneficiary, correct? Per
beneficiary, yeah. And 529 plans can only have one beneficiary. So if you do have more than one child who you're going to be using the plans for, you'll want to open separate accounts for each.
All right, great.
Okay. So that is a good segue to our next slide, which talks about 529 plans in K through 12 education. So as I mentioned, you can use the 529 plan to pay for up to $10,000 per year in tuition expenses at private, public, or religious K through 12 schools. We just want to advise that in some cases you should use caution, because the biggest advantage of a 529 plan is the federal tax-free compounding. And of course, that advantage is greater the longer you have the account. So if you're going to withdraw early to pay for K through 12 tuition, you're going to miss out on a lot of that federal tax-free growth. So what we recommend is that if you do want to use a 529 plan to pay for K through 12, you can open a separate account and select a conservative investment option to fit that shorter investment time horizon. You can invest more aggressively if you have 18 years until college, but if you're using this plan for someone who's going to go to kindergarten in 5 years, you want to invest more conservatively. And then also one other thing is that some states offer a state income tax deduction or state tax credit where you can use your 529, when you do use your 529 to pay for K through 12. But just be aware that not all states will award this benefit. Even if they award it for college use of 529 plans, they might not offer the same benefit if you use the 529 to pay for K through 12. So you just want to check on that and make sure that you do understand the rules that your state has. So, but even if your state does offer a tax benefit, it's usually a good idea to have a separate 529 to save for K through 12. Any questions on the K through 12?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, then Matt, I think I'm going to hand it over to you next to start talking about 529 plans and how they work.
All right, great. Thanks, Katie, so much. All right, guys, so what we're going to do in my two sections here is we're going to go over 529 plans from a high level, their benefits, how they operate, et cetera. And then we'll go into a very important part, and that is picking the best 529 plan for you. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So what is a 529 plan? So essentially, these are investment vehicles created by the government that allows families to set aside money for future educational expenses. It used to be that was just for higher education, but as Katie covered, that now is for K through 12 tuition as well. And the way they work is kind of like a reverse 401k, and much more along the lines of a Roth IRA, meaning that post-tax dollars are going to go into your 529 plan. Those monies are going to be invested a certain way. I know we did have a question about whether 529 plans are subject to market volatility. In most cases, yes. However, there are conservative investment options, including FDIC insured investment options that I'll go over. But essentially, those monies are invested in the market. That account will grow over time, and then essentially all of those gains within the account are going to be completely tax-free, meaning that if you were to invest $10,000 over the course of your investment, that investment is now worth $20,000 by the time your child goes to school and you're going to be tapping the account. Those $10,000 worth of gains are going to be completely tax-free. And then in addition, and this is a question that we had come in from Greg, are there any advantages to using a 529 plan over simply investing in the stock market? Well, I think I just went over one huge one, right? Is that you're not going to be paying those 15 or 20% capital gains that you would if you just invested within the stock market. So now to dig a little bit deeper, there's 90 plus plans across 49 different states. The only state that does not have one is the state of Wyoming. And there's a few of them that do have residency requirements. For example, in South Carolina, that plan is only opened to South Carolina residents. Same thing with Louisiana and I think one other one. But in general, as an investor, you can open up any of these plans across the country and your child can go to any qualified institution. So what I mean by that is that you can live in Florida, you can open up the California 529 plan, and then your child can go to school in New York and it all works out just fine. And why would you open up a different one? Well, all of these are completely different. I mean, just like if you're choosing your health insurance plan, they're all going to be different. So they're going to have different fees. They're going to have different investment options. They're going to have different historical performance. Some of them are going to be very good, and some of them can be mediocre. So as Katie said, I'm going to get into how to select one of these in a little bit. And then lastly, most of the time, although they're run by the state will usually partner with a large financial institution in order to kind of run that program. So that means when you are opening up, let's say the Massachusetts 529 plan, for example, that's going to be run by Fidelity, which means you're going to have Fidelity investment options, and your money's actually going to be invested with Fidelity's and the Vanguard's T. Rowe Prices of the world. So that's the way it usually operates. So before we dig a little bit deeper into some of the benefits, Katie, do we have any questions about kind of like the high-level operation of 529 plans?
We do have a question from Mark related to the 529s in different states. And he's asking, if you use a 529 plan in another state, can the state you live in tax that money when it's withdrawn to pay the university?
That is, I would say 96% of the cases, that is not true. I believe a state like Alabama, there might be some sort of restrictions, but that information is all located on savingforcollege.com. But in the heavy majority of cases, it's going to be completely tax-free no matter where you're using that money.
Right. Okay. And how about using the funds for international education?
So there are about 400 institutions overseas and in Canada that you can use your 529 plan at and still get all of those great benefits. However, not everyone is going to be eligible. So once again, Saving for College has a great tool. You can just type in, qualified institution, savingforcollege.com, and there's actually a little search tool that lets you search not only in the United States, but also all of the foreign institutions that are eligible for 529 plan use.
Okay, we'll do one more question because I think it's a good one. If you move to a different state, do you have to switch plans?
So you do not have to switch plans, but there's many cases where it would be very prudent to, right? So let's say that you're living in, we'll take Florida again, where there's no state income taxes, so you're not getting any additional state tax benefit that I'll go over on the next slide. And then you move to, let's say, New York, where you're going to be getting a $10,000, up to a $10,000 state tax deduction for investing within the New York plan. You may want to switch over to the New York plan at that point in time and then contribute there, so that way you're taking advantage. And then in some cases, those states actually accept rollover contributions for a state tax deduction, meaning that if you have $5,000 in your account, you roll that over. It could be, you could get a $5,000 state tax deduction for doing that. But then to reverse that, there's some cases where you may not want to. So let's say you're living in a state that you're taking a state tax deduction every year. If you were to roll over those assets to a different plan when you move, you could be subject to state tax recapture, which means that all of those state tax savings you got, you now have to pay back to the state. So in those scenarios, what you want to do is that, say you move to another state where you can open up that state's plan and get a state tax deduction, simply just start a second 529 plan and start contributing to that one, and then just let your other account grow as your investment grows.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt.
All right, awesome. Well, now let's go through some of the other 529 plan benefits. So first one, tax benefits. We went over kind of the federal tax savings. But then in addition to those federal tax savings, over 30 states offer an additional state tax incentive for investing within a 529 plan. And we'll go ahead and we'll get into that in a little bit in regards to the way that operates. Next one, a great one about 529 plans, and also super relevant for this time of year. So it's a great time to get one started. This isn't like a 401k where only you or your employer can be contributing to this account. Anyone and everyone can contribute to this account, so you can actually crowdsource your child's education. And many 529 plans have online platforms today to make it easy to invite friends and family to contribute directly to your 529 plan. So this is a great time of year where we see a lot of friends and family contribute, so around the holidays. So you can go ahead and get a 529 plan open, share, usually it's like a unique code with your friends and family, and then they can contribute directly to your 529 plan. In most cases, they can set up one-time or recurring contributions, so a great way to kind of boost your savings. Next is flexibility. So these are a pretty versatile product. Katie went over some of that stuff already. So you can actually change your 529 plan once every rolling 12 months. So if you open up in May, next May you can go ahead and change it. And you can change your investment options twice in a calendar year. So it's not like the stock market where you can just be switching your investment option all the time, but you can change it up to twice a year. And then next, I get a lot of questions about, what if my kid doesn't go to school or gets a scholarship? I think we already had some of these questions come in. Well, if your child gets a scholarship, you can remove the amount of the scholarship from your 529 plan without having to pay that 10% penalty. If they don't go to school, you have a few options. Katie already mentioned you can rename the beneficiary to any qualified family member. So let's say you're saving for 2 children. The first child doesn't go to school, or maybe starts their own company, which would be great. You can go ahead and take those assets in the current 529 plan and roll them over to your other beneficiary. However, if you have no reason for the money to be in there, you just want to take it out, you want to go and buy yourself a new car, whatever it may be, that's going to be known as a non-qualified withdrawal. So only the gains portion, never the principal, is going to be subject to income taxes and a 10% penalty. So taking that example from earlier, if you invested $10,000 and it's now worth $20,000, $10,000 of that investment is going to be subject to income taxes and a 10% penalty. Next, no income restriction. So it doesn't matter how much or how little you make. There's no income phase outs like with some of the other savings vehicles that Katie mentioned earlier. Next, minimal financial aid impact. I'm not going to get into this too much because Katie's going to cover it in great detail in a little while. But assets in a 529 plan actually get preferential treatment when you're filling out that FAFSA. So they're assessed at a maximum of 5.64%. And as I said, Katie will dig into that in a little bit. And then lastly is high contribution limits. So most plans have contribution limits in excess of $400,000. So that usually covers undergrad and graduate tuition at the within the state on average tuition costs. So you can save quite a bit. We did have one question about this, like the kind of the finer aspects of this. So if you can only contribute up to $400,000. So that means that if your account got up to $399,999, you're not going to be able to put any more money in. However, it's not going to stop that account from growing over time. You're just not going to be able to contribute it anymore. So I saw that question come in, and I just wanted to cover it. So before we keep going, any questions on any of this, Katie?
Yeah, we have a couple great questions, and some are very timely. For example, a couple people asked if someone is, doing the crowdfunding, giving the gift of college through a 529 plan, are they eligible for a state tax deduction for the gift?
So that is going to be on a state-by-state basis. So some plans, only the account owner is able to get that state tax deduction. In some cases, it's any contributor. So if you're going to have someone that's going to be contributing a lot, one, check for that. And then two, maybe grandma and grandpa want to contribute to their account and they live in a different state where they're getting a state tax deduction. It may be in their best interest to open up their own 529 plan for your child and go ahead and contribute to that so they're getting the state tax deduction. So we can't get into every instance here, but it is dependent on a state-by-state basis.
Right. And then someone else is asking, sorry, I lost the question. Is there an age limit to when you have to use the funds in a 529 plan? For example, some accounts require that you have to use the funds by the time the beneficiary turns 30.
No, there's not. So that's another thing that you can do if you, don't have really any reason to use it and your child doesn't go to school. You can just go ahead and let that account grow and then maybe use it for potential future grandchildren. So there's no really time limits on when you have to use your 529 plan.
Okay, great. Those are some great questions.
All right. Okay, awesome. Let's keep going. So, you always get the question as well of like, is it too late or what's the best time to start saving for my child's education? Well, my response is always going to be the best thing you can do is get started. I mean, the earlier the better. We all know how expensive college is being. That's why a lot of us are on this webinar today. So if you can get started earlier, it is better. But, it's never going to be too late. You can obviously see the benefits of starting early. If you're putting in $200 a month, 6 years could mean the difference of $40,000. That can be an entire year of school or an entire semester, depending on where your child's going. But what's the case where it's too late? That's going to be never, Katie. As you can see, even towards the end, if you can go ahead and try to catch up, it's great. And then also there's those state tax benefits that I spoke of, right? So perhaps your child's just about to go to school and you are living in a state where you're getting up to a $10,000 or $20,000 state tax deduction. Well, you may not have time to really take advantage of like compound interest or your investment. But if you're going to be writing a $20,000 check to the school, you might as well put that into the 529 plan first, take your state tax deduction, and go ahead and pay the school after that. And then as well, something that I teased about earlier was these FDIC insured kind of programs, investment options. So not every plan has these. So if it's something you're interested in, make sure that you find a plan that does offer them. But this structure of FDIC insured certificates makes it ideal for families who are about to go to college or maybe saving for K-12 education where you have a shorter investment horizon, or just maybe someone who considers themselves a super conservative investor. So it allows you to protect your principal of your investment and still take advantage of those tax benefits that I talked about and still allow you some gains on the account. So usually what it is, you pick a 1, 2, or 3 year kind of certificate of deposit. They're going to offer you guaranteed returns. Obviously, a little bit higher return for the 3 year versus the 1 year, but you may be able to get a 1.5 to 2% return on your investment over the course of that time, and you don't have to worry about the market fluctuation. So you're guaranteeing yourself that that return. So perhaps they only have 2 years of school, so maybe you get a 2-year CD. Maybe you're living in a state that allows you to take a state tax benefit, so you're getting that 2% and that state tax deduction. So something to keep in mind if you are getting started late. And then finally, Katie mentioned it, at the start of our broadcast here, you can always grow your account more with UPromise. And, that's something Katie's going to dig into the program in a little bit. But, if you need to play a little bit of catch up, UPromise is a great way to do that. So any questions here, Katie, before we go ahead and talk about the most important thing of selecting a 529 plan?
Yeah, we just have one person wanted to make sure he heard you correctly. So you can still contribute once the beneficiary is in college, right?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. So once again, there's no really timeline to use it. It's never too late to start contributing. You can still contribute while they're in college.
Okay, great. Move on then.
All right, so let's get down to the nitty gritty here of selecting a 529 plan. Get your pen and paper ready because this, it does dig into the details a little bit. So the first thing that we're going to have to do in order to navigate these waters is choose the 529 plan that we want to invest in, and we have to start at the highest level, right? Because there's two types of 529 plans. There are prepaid plans and there's 529 savings plans. So prepaid plans, only about a dozen or so states offer these. Some of them, are no longer in existence, but the actual first 529 plan was a prepaid plan created in Michigan. And, what the pitch is for these is that, lock in tomorrow's tuition rates today. That's not really the case. You're always going to be paying a premium on, today's prices. But essentially what it is, it's a program where they say, if you want to cover 4 years of school by the time your child gets there, and they're going to be going to college in 16 years, you can lock yourself into a contract for X amount of dollars per month, and then that's going to cover their 4 years of college, down the road. Some of them only cover tuition. Some of them have options for additional contracts for room and board. But it is a good program, and some states have better programs than the other. I'm down in Florida where we have Florida Prepaid. It's a great program. Almost every new parent starts one down here. But some of the other ones, it's going to be quite pricey. And then as well, it's always not completely fiscally feasible for a lot of families because these contracts can start at $200, $300, $400 a month, depending on how old your child is. And that's where the savings account comes into play, where it's usually going to be just $25 to go ahead and get an account opened. So the savings account is what most people think of when we think about 529 plans. And this is what I talked about earlier, where you're going and putting post-tax dollars in, you pick some investment options, and your money is actually invested in the market, and it goes up and down as your investments are going along. These are the ones that are going to have FDIC insured, type of programs. So this is kind of like the normal one. But then even within savings, we have to make another distinction between advisor-sold and direct-sold 529 plans. So advisor-sold 529 plans are going to be plans that you actually have to use a financial advisor in order to open them. The benefits to these types of plans is they usually have a much bigger array of investment options because the state's going to curate a set level of menu investment options for any 529 plan. You can't just be like, give me some Apple stock and some Tesla stock and I'm going to put it in here. They're actually going to have a menu of investment options to choose from. The advisor solds are generally going to have a bigger menu. So if you are a more savvy investor, it's something you may want to consider. The downside is that they're usually going to have much higher fees, and you're probably going to be paying that financial advisor a commission on all of your contributions into the plan. So that's where the direct sold 529 plan comes into play. So you're not going to have help from an advisor here, but the good thing is anyone can open these up. You can go to nysaves.org and just open up a New York 529 plan yourself. You're going to have to choose your investment option. You're going to have to choose how much you're going to be contributing every month. But these are going to have much lower fees on average. They're still going to have great returns, but as I said, the menu of investment options is usually going to be a little bit smaller. So any questions here, Katie, before we keep going?
No, I think we can just move on to the next slide.
Okay, great. So this is where we're going to talk about these additional state tax incentives that I had mentioned earlier. So as I said, over 30 states offer some sort of state tax deduction or credit for investing in a 529 plan. And you can see here through this map, these are kind of, these are the states that are going to be offering, additional incentives. Obviously, there's going to be states like Florida and Texas where you don't have any state income tax, so obviously there's no state tax benefit. Some cases you do pay state taxes like California and you're not getting a state tax benefit. But, it's not just as simple as like, does my state offer one? In most of the cases, you have to open up your in-state plan in order to get that state tax deduction. So what I mean by that is that, let's take Illinois, for example. Illinois is going to be offering up to a $20,000 state tax deduction every year for investing within a 529 plan. However, you have to open up an Illinois 529 plan in order to take advantage of that state tax deduction. If you lived in Illinois and you opened up that a New York 529 plan or a Virginia 529 plan, you're actually going to be foregoing that potential state tax deduction. There are a couple of states that are great that are known as tax parity states, where you can live there and you can open up any 529 plan from across the country and still get a state tax deduction. So that's going to be Arizona, Arkansas, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, and Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania, you're getting up to a $30,000 state tax deduction every year, and you can open up any plan you want. So you can open up a California 529 plan and still get that state tax deduction. And then lastly, just to peel the onion completely apart here, just beware. So just because a state is offering a state tax deduction doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be the best one for you. Because what a lot of these states do is that to offset the lost revenue from these, potential state tax deductions, is that they actually just increase the fees within the plan. So with how much you're contributing, you may live in a state where, depending on your state tax bracket, it may net you an additional $35, $40 every year via a state income tax deduction. However, the fees on the account might be 4 to 5 times as high as investing in a super low fee plan elsewhere. So it's just something to be cognizant of as you're researching your plans. I usually like to say that you should be paying below 30 basis points in fees in a direct sold 529 plan. So if it does get north of that and you're getting a state tax deduction, just be wary of it. So it's not always just, a direct line to, do I get a state tax deduction? Yes, I should open up my plan. So just be aware of that. So Katie, any questions on that? Because I know it does get a little bit confusing.
No specific questions really related to the state tax benefits. I know we got a question just now about private K through 12 school, and just wanted to reiterate that that's going to be on a state-by-state basis, whether or not a state tax benefit is eligible when using a 529 for K through 12, but I think that was the only related question.
Okay, great. And I believe savingforcollege.com has a running tally of all the states and how they're treating that state tax benefit for K through 12 purposes.
Yep. Okay.
All right, great. All right, so the next step is going to be researching and comparing these different 529 plans, because as I said, they're all very different. So the first thing that you should really look at, from the high level is that who is this plan manager that the state has partnered with? Are they a well-known plan manager? Have they been with the plan long? Because these all have contracts. So, some of them might be coming up and you don't want to wake up the next day and all of a sudden you have a completely different 529 plan, all different investment options, et cetera. So, keep an eye on that. And then in some cases, perhaps, you do want to do it for just ease of use. Maybe you're not getting any state tax benefit, within your state, and you already have a Fidelity 401k, so you just want to have a Fidelity 529 plan, or a T. Rowe Price, Roth IRA, and you just want to have a T. Rowe Price 529 plan. So, that's just something to keep in mind. Next, I talked about, are there any fees on the account? Not many, but some 529 accounts start, charge an ongoing fee or an account opening fee. So keep that in mind. And then again, what are the total expenses? What's known as the expense ratio on the plan? And these are basically going to be the fees you're going to pay to the plan based on your account balance. And they can vary greatly. So even in the direct sold, we can be looking at the difference between 10 to 100 basis points. And then if we're talking about advisor sold plans, it could get up to 170 basis points. So obviously fees are going to eat into your account over time. So what you're basically looking for is just a low fee plan that's also got a good track record of performance. And that's, what the last thing is here is the investment options. Do they have a wide range of investments? If I'm a conservative investor, are they offering an FDIC insured investment option? How risky should my portfolio be? How long is it until school? You don't want to have 3 years into school and then be invested in 100% equities, and all of a sudden something like 2008 happens and it completely screws up your future college planning. So make sure that you're setting up your portfolio to align with your tolerance for risk. And then the same thing with performance, a pretty obvious one, better returns. Means more money. Obviously, you would want to invest in something like, Tesla stock as opposed to Enron over the last couple of years. So, make sure you look for a good track record of performance. And if you need help doing that, you can always go to savingforcollege.com, check out our 5-cap ratings. And then also we got a great comparison tool where you can, compare 3 plans side by side, look at different investment options, the plan managers, all that good stuff. So, if you're having trouble kind of navigating the waters, savingforcollege.com is a great resource.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
All right, awesome. So the last thing, when you're going and you're picking out your 529 plan, you decide which one you want. you have an idea of how much you want to put in every month, or how much big one-time deposit you want to put in, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to choose your investment options or investment options. And there's a couple of factors that we need to consider here. First is going to be the type of investment option. And you can see all the stuff at the top, and we were looking at age-based static FDIC, fees, risk tolerance, or investment horizon. So to go first, the type that we're going to be looking at is going to be age-based static, or the FDIC insured I mentioned earlier. So what is an age-based investment option? So these are similar to target date portfolios in a 401k plan. So what they are is that they automatically become more conservative as your child gets closer to college. So what I mean by that is that you are saving for a newborn. Your portfolio might be 100% invested in equities. And then automatically over time, without you even touching it, by the time your child's ready to go to school, it may be invested in 20% equities and 80% bond and money market funds. These are very, very popular among parents. About 70% of all investments in direct sold 529 plans go into age-based investment these days. However, most of these plans now will have more than one track. What I mean by that is that if you're opening up a plan, you may see an aggressive track, a moderate track, and a conservative track. So if we're looking at a 0 to 18-year-old, an aggressive track might start 100% in equities and end up at 30%, whereas a conservative track may start off at 60% in equities and then be 0% in equities by the time your child gets to school. So once again, when we're talking about risk tolerance, make sure that you are picking an investment option that aligns with your risk. Next is going to be the static investment option. So these portfolios have a specific investment objective in mind, and their asset allocation is never going to change over time. So like I said before, that 100 to 30%, that's not going to happen. If you open up a static investment option and it is 80% in equities and 20% in bond type of funds, it's going to be 80 and 20% from age 0 all the way to 18. It's not going to waver from that. So if you are a more advanced investor and you kind of want to build a portfolio around that, make sure, as I said, you can change your investment options twice a year. Make sure you're keeping an eye on that, so that way, as your child's getting closer to school, you're kind of, changing your portfolio accordingly, with your investment horizon. And then lastly, those FDIC plans that I mentioned earlier, where you're kind of guaranteeing that you're not going to have any losses in the account. You're going to limit your upside in terms of return, but you're not going to have to worry that your account's going to be worth less, tomorrow than it is today. So once again, a great investment option for conservative investors and people with a short investment horizon. All right, Katie, well, that's all I have. So let's go ahead and take any last questions we may have on this stuff before we go ahead and switch it back over to you.
Okay, so one question regarding the investment changes twice per year. Someone's asking, what are the penalties if you accidentally do more than 2 times? But from what I understand, you cannot do more than 2 investment changes. Won't your plan stop you?
Yeah, you'll just be rejected. So whether you log onto your account and you try to switch an investment option, you'll just get an error. Or if you try to mail in a different investment option, they're just going to disregard that. So, make sure if you're trying to be, a savvy investor and you're making your changes as you're seeing, the different stock markets and the China trade talks and all that other stuff, just make sure that you're only getting 2 changes. So keep that in mind.
Okay, and finally, one last question. What's the best way to compare funds? To compare plans, rather?
Yeah, so as I said, we have the great comparison tool over at savingforcollege.com. And actually on savingforcollege.com, you can go into each individual investment option and see how that investment option compares to its peers. So that means like similar types of asset allocations and investment objectives, et cetera. But what you're really trying to balance at the end of the day is that what is the most bang for my buck, right? So what is the lowest fee investment option that's still performing at a reasonable level? And there's a great fee versus performance chart versus category average on savingforcollege.com. So if you want to kind of dig into it, that information is available on the site.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Matt. That was really helpful. And again, try to answer as many questions as we can. If you are asking questions, if we can remind you to please type those in the Q&A box and not the chat box, because we are reading questions from the Q&A box. With that, I will move on to our next section. So once you have your 529 plan and have it all picked out, you're probably wondering how much you should put into it. And we want to talk about a way that you can actually boost your savings with UPromise. At savingforcollege.com, we think UPromise is a great complement to 529 plans, and it's a free program that's going to help you earn extra money for college savings. UPromise is a loyalty program. It rewards members with cash back for making purchases online, dining at participating restaurants, and booking travel. And those rewards can be deposited into a linked 529 account or a checking or savings account. And I personally use UPromise. I think it's a great program. I have linked it to my kids' 529 plans. It's very easy with all the online shopping we do, especially around the holidays. I always remember to log into UPromise first. And just a little bit more about UPromise. The company has been helping families save for college for almost 20 years. They've been around a long time. And in addition to the rewards program, they provide expert advice, simple tools, and some unique offers that can help you grow and accelerate your college savings every day. With a UPromise account, there are multiple ways you can get incremental earnings to put into your 529 plan. First, probably one of the easiest ways is that you can earn cash back for online purchases. Similar to other credit card type rewards, the rewards range from around 3% to 7% of total purchases. And that's going to be when you shop online through UPromise at participating retailers. So you'd log into your UPromise account, you'd find the store that you want to shop at, and click the link through UPromise. And then your purchase will be eligible for those rewards. And I'm telling you, I guarantee that at least one store that you regularly shop at will be featured on UPromise. They have everything from stores like Walmart, Macy's, Bass Pro Shop, just anything you could really think of. And it's a great way to kind of earn rewards for college savings, especially when you're buying holiday gifts. The other way you can earn rewards is to use UPromise when you dine out. So how that works is that you link your credit or debit card to your UPromise account, and you're going to earn 2.5% cash back when you use that card that's registered to dine at participating restaurants. And if you use the UPromise MasterCard, which is also available on that site, the reward doubles. They have a neat tool on their site where you can actually type in your location and it will show you nearby participating restaurants. So if you're out shopping with your family, out doing, holiday events, you want to go get something to eat, you can quickly go on your phone, see which restaurants are nearby that would qualify the rewards, and go ahead and use that registered card. And finally, they have a UPromise MasterCard, which allows you to earn 1.25% cash back on all purchases made with the card. And there's also additional opportunities to earn bonus rewards through their UPromise Roundup program. And I think there's actually an additional bonus when you link the 529 plan to your account. And UPromise, it's very flexible, it's easy, and as I mentioned, it's free to sign up. You can link it to any 529 plan or any checking or savings account. Of course, we encourage the 529 plan to boost your college savings, but you don't need a 529 plan to join. You can sign up and start accumulating your savings right away. And then once you open, if you choose to, you can link your 529 plan. The earnings are automatically transferred into the account of your choice. You can set up accounts for one account for multiple children, linking it to each child's 529 plan. And what happens then is that the earnings are equally distributed among the accounts. And it's not just for parents, grandparents, anyone else who wants to help you save for college, they can link their UPromise account to your child's 529 plan. As I mentioned, the rewards are typically 3% to 7% on purchases, but they also offer plenty of special bonus deals during the holidays, especially right now. They had some really great deals that I took advantage of for Black Friday, and I'm sure they'll have more throughout the holiday season. And a little bit of savings each month really does add up over time. And by joining the UPromise, you become a member of a like-minded community who share one common goal, and that's saving for college. Any questions about the UPromise program?
No, it doesn't seem to. Go ahead.
Okay, well, to learn more, as I mentioned, just visit the UPromise website, and we'll get into 529.
Oh, real quick, we did have, I think you might have covered this, but is UPromise tied to a credit card?
No, unless you choose to enroll in the UPromise MasterCard, but you do not have to. That's just a separate program that you can do, but you can join UPromise for free, and you do not have to have any type of credit card. Okay, so we'll move on. I know we had some questions regarding 529 plans and financial aid already, so we'll go ahead and cover that right now. One of the most popular questions we do get is, if you save in a 529 plan, does that mean your child will get less financial aid? And the answer is, the 529 plan does affect college financial aid, but the impact is limited, and it's going to vary depending on who the account owner is. So, just to clarify, we're going to focus right now on federal need-based financial aid, because the rules for institutional student aid is going to vary by college. So institutional aid is the awards that colleges give and what they, how they view your assets and income. But right now we're going to talk about the FAFSA. So a student's expected family contribution, EFC, is what determines how much financial aid they're eligible to receive. So the EFC is a measure of a family's financial strength, and it's the amount a student is expected to be able to pay for college out of pocket based on their family's financial circumstances. Now, whether or not that is the amount your family can pay for out of pocket doesn't really matter. This is what the school determines that your family can pay out of pocket. And the EFC is based on information that you provide on your student's FAFSA. So this calculation considers the student's income and assets and a parent's income and assets. A student's income and assets has a much greater impact on financial aid than the parent's income and assets do, as you can see from the slide. But the good thing about 529 plans is that compared to other types of accounts, they receive favorable treatment on the FAFSA. So a 529 plan account, whether it's owned by a parent or a dependent student, is going to be considered a parent asset. So what that means is about the first $6,000 or so is going to fall under the asset protection allowance, and so it won't be counted at all. And the exact amount of that allowance depends on the parent ages, but it's roughly around $6,000 or so. Will not be counted on the FAFSA as money to pay for college. And then the rest of the assets are going to be counted at a maximum of 5.64%. So let's say there's $10,000 in reportable 529 plan assets. The college is going to assume that the family had $564 to pay for college. So the student's financial aid package could be reduced by only $564 on that $10,000 529 plan. So if you compare this to other student-owned assets, such as assets held in a custodial account, which I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, those are counted at 20%. So that $10,000, if it was in a custodial account instead of a 529 plan, they would consider that $2,000 as available funds to pay for college. So since 529 plans are reported as parent assets on the FAFSA, that means the siblings' 529 plan assets are also going to be counted. But generally, assets in a sibling's custodial 529 plan account are not counted on the FAFSA. So if anyone has any questions on that, please ask. But you might notice that since they are a parent-owned account, that means that all of the 529 plans in that family with that parent are going to be counted. So the other big benefit of using a 529 plan, if you're applying for financial aid, is that qualified distributions are excluded from federal income tax and not reported on the FAFSA as long as the account is owned by a parent or dependent student. So this is going to be one of the biggest advantages of using a 529 plan over something like a Roth IRA, because while assets in a retirement account are not reported on the FAFSA, distributions are counted as income, and student income can reduce aid eligibility by as much as 50%. So that is a huge advantage to using 529s as opposed to some of the other vehicles. Any questions on 529 plans in the FAFSA?
Yeah, Katie, we do have one on a grandparent-owned 529 plan. I forget if there's going to be a separate slide on that or if we should cover it now.
It's actually the next slide. So
all right, perfect.
Yeah, so feel free to ask again if I don't cover it in the next slide.
Yep.
Okay, so grandparent-owned 529s, and I think this is a really timely topic right now for the holidays too. Many grandparents, wondering what to get the grandchildren for Christmas. A 529 plan is a great option, but is it better for grandparents, parents, or the child to own the account? Well, anyone can contribute to a child's existing 529 plan, but grandparents also have the option to open an account in their own name and make the child the beneficiary. So we're going to talk about grandparent 529 plans, but this also applies to aunts, uncles, friends, or really anyone else besides a parent who wants to open a 529 plan for a child. So first I'm going to talk about the pros, the benefits to having the 529 plan in your own name as the gift giver. And number one is that you'll retain you'll retain control of the life of the account over the life of the account, and you can always take the money back if needed. As you know, though, if you do take the money back and use it for a non-qualified expense, you will be subject to income tax and penalty. But let's say that you're saving for a child and you decide along the way that that child is not going to college, you can change the beneficiary at any time to another child. The second benefit is your gift might be deductible from state income tax, as we talked about. As Matt mentioned, over 30 states offer a state tax deduction or state tax credit for your contributions. And most states allow anyone who contributes to the 529 plan to claim the income tax deduction or credit, but there are 10 states that only offer this benefit to the account owner. So for example, if you live in New York, contributions to a New York 529 plan are deductible from state income tax, but only the account owner or their spouse are eligible to claim the deduction. So if that's something you're interested in, you just want to make sure you're clear on your state's rules. The next benefit is that the assets held in a non-parent owned 529 plan do not have to be reported on the FAFSA as long as they stay in the account. And that this is where we're going to come to the cons, because the minute that a grandparent or someone takes a withdrawal from the 529 plan to pay for a child's college, it's going to be reported as student income, as I mentioned, and assessed at up to 50%. So let's say a grandfather wanted to give $10,000 to help pay for college, takes a distribution from the 529 plan that he owns, that could reduce the student's financial aid by as much as $5,000, so about half of the value. Some of the workarounds we recommend, because for obvious reasons, some grandparents do want the account in their name. There are some workarounds to avoid the negative impact on financial aid. First of all, you can wait until January 1st of the grandchild's sophomore year of college to help pay tuition if they're graduating in 4 years. And that's because the FAFSA looks at income from 2 years prior. So if they're graduating in 5 years, you can always wait until January 1st of the student's junior year. But either way, if they're graduating in 4 years, by second semester of sophomore year, you should be in the clear to start taking distributions from the 529 plan without them having to be reported on the FAFSA. Another option is to change the account owner to a parent if your plan permits. Or you can wait until the student graduates to help pay down student loans. But I know we received this question from at least 2 different people. Student loan payments are not considered a qualified expense. There is pending legislation that is trying to get student loan payments approved as a qualified expense, but at this time, if you do use a 529 plan to pay down student loans, that is going to incur income tax and a 10% penalty on the earnings portion. So yeah, and a couple other benefits that we didn't mention that are pretty specific to grandparents is that the contributions will be removed from your taxable estate. So there's a lot of information on savingforcollege.com about how to use 529 plans as an estate planning tool if you want to give large contributions. And Matt, did I answer the question that came through?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just one high-level question is about do 529 plans only affect need-based financial aid and not merit-based?
Yeah, yes, I think the answer is yes to that. What we're basically talking about is need-based federal financial aid. So as I mentioned, your specific school might have a different formula to calculate your the aid that you get. So for everything that I said in this presentation, that applies to need-based financial aid at the federal level. Okay, we have a few more minutes, so I'm just going to go ahead and get into 529 plan withdrawals, because I know I saw a couple questions on this come in as well. So how to withdraw from your 529 plan. And mainly this is telling you how to withdraw without incurring taxes and penalty, because I'm sure that's what you all want to do. So the first thing you're going to do is calculate your child's qualified expenses for the entire year. So as we are approaching year end, this might be a good time to start taking a look at your child's college expenses. Don't forget if you paid for any K-12 tuition, if you paid for room and board, all the things on the list. And then you're going to determine when to take that withdrawal. So I just want to remind everyone that distributions should be taken during the same year in which the qualified expenses were paid. So for example, don't include anything that wasn't paid for in this year. If you plan to pay for tuition in January, don't withdraw before that tuition is paid. And then you want to decide which account to withdraw from. And this is important if your child has multiple 529 plan accounts, maybe a grandparent owns one account and a parent owns the other. You want to consider withdrawing from the parent account first, since that will have the least impact on financial aid, with actually no impact on financial aid. So just either way, be sure to coordinate with relatives so that you don't take withdrawals for the same expenses. For example, if if an uncle has a 529 plan for your child and you do as well, make sure you're not both taking out money to cover the child's tuition, because one of those distributions would be considered non-qualified. And then once you have all that information ready, you're going to complete a withdrawal request. And this is done by completing a form on your plan's website. And you'll have the option to take a full or partial withdrawal. And then you can also select which portfolio to withdraw from. So as Matt mentioned, there's a bunch of different investment options you'll have to choose from, and you can allocate your investments to best match your college savings time horizon. So when you withdraw, you can decide which you want to pull from. And then how much to withdraw. So we'll get into a little detail on how to calculate those qualified expenses. As I mentioned, you first want to add up all your qualified expenses, and don't forget the obvious ones. And then also, books, supplies, computers are now considered a qualified expense. So don't forget that if you bought a laptop or anything like that. And then you want to make sure to subtract any tax-free educational assistance. Or any expenses used to generate the American Opportunity Tax Credit or Lifetime Learning Credit. This is important because there's no double dipping when it comes to these federal education tax benefits. So for example, if you are going to claim the AOTC, the maximum you can use to generate that credit is $4,000. So you want to subtract $4,000 from your qualified 529 plan expenses before you take the withdrawal, so that you're not double dipping. If you withdraw too much, you can always withdraw the funds into another 529 plan within 60 days to avoid taxes. Refunds from the college can also be deposited back into the same 529 within 60 days. So does anyone have any questions on withdrawals? I know we're coming up to the end of the presentation.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much running on time here, so.
Okay, well, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you, Matt. Thank you to UPromise for making this webinar happen. Please reach out to us if we didn't get to your questions, and hope everyone has a great holiday season, and Happy New Year.
All right, thanks, Katie. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.